So, is the Bible dependable? We'll talk about is it corrupted? Is the Bible corrupted? I don't believe so, and I have a lot of reasons to believe that. Now, we can talk about St. Augustine, we can talk about Constantine, we can talk about the Catholic Church, we can talk about did Calvin do anything? Any of the major historians or the major theologians, did they somehow compile the Bible and change the wording in it? Is that possible? Well, reasons that I don't think that that is the case is because when the Bible was first going out into the world after the death of Jesus, the apostles wrote their different letters and their different gospels. And when they wrote it, it spread like wildfire to different places. So it went to Asia, it went to Europe, it went to India, all these different places where it it just spread across the whole world. And because of that, because it was so quickly to spread, there's little chance to be able to compile all the different manuscripts from all the different places, from all the different people that were copying it. So you had a lot of different laymen. It wasn't just the church that was keeping all of the scriptures in one place. It was being copied by non-professionals all over the place in different languages. So when it spread, the way that God kept his word intact was by allowing so many different people groups to copy what they had and as best as they could. And not only that, but when a writer was copying a manuscript, they would copy sometimes more. They would take notes on the side sometimes, let's say a scribe would take notes, and when they were copying from another scribe that had notes on their page, they would take the notes and copy even the notes that were given by the other scribe. So they didn't want anything to be lost. So we have more information than what is necessary or what is just the basic scripture. There's also the notes from the scribes that wrote before them, and then their own notes. So then the next scribe would then take the notes from that person and the notes from that person. And so they didn't want to lose any information at all. So what we have is a giant pile of everything. So we haven't lost any of the scriptures. And when we look at all sorts of different countries and what they have and compile it with what other countries have, it's very similar. So when we talk about is the Bible corrupted, could someone have changed the words? It's pretty much impossible to be able to compile every single person's that copied the Bibles. Like they took every single copy that was ever made and then they changed all of them to say the same thing. First of all, you would see different ink. You would see um, you would see that it was changed, but there hasn't been any changes. So when you look back at all these different manuscripts, you have different languages, you have different writers, thousands of different manuscripts from different places, all saying the same thing. And that just proves the fact that the Bible wasn't corrupted. So when we talk about how God preserves his word, it was through the fact that it spread like wildfire to so many different places, to so many different people, to so many different copies that you can't corrupt it. You just couldn't. Um, there would be at least evidence to say so, but maybe in one or two manuscripts, there may be a couple out there that have something written in it that isn't written elsewhere, but you can tell that that's different. And so you go back as far as you can to the originals, and I believe that the ones that some of the scraps that we have date all the way back to like 100 years after Christ's death. That's really close to the time that it was actually written. A lot of the originals were written. So we don't have the originals, but we have copies of copies that date back really close to when that happened. So when we even talk about any other historical book, when you talk about the Iliad or we talk about Shakespeare or any of that, all of those books, we don't have the originals for those either. And actually, we have more close copies to the Bible than we do any other historical book. It's actually quite amazing that we have the closest uh, dated copies to the Bible than almost any other historical book. So, in actuality, the Bible is one of the most translated, accurately translated things between copyists that we have in the world. Um, Not only that, we have more information on top of um, what was just originally written. So we have all sorts of notes that other scribes have written. There are scribal errors in places, but what you can do is take all the different copies and put them all together and see which ones have that error and which don't. And so what we've been doing, what the computer programs have been doing, is been able to take those thousands and thousands of copies that we do have and see what things would most generally be the original. So if you've got 1,000 copies that say this one phrase in a certain way in a certain order, and then you have two from another place that say something slightly different in a different order, then you'd obviously go with the thousands that all say the same as opposed to the two that don't. Does that make sense? So when we look to see if what something might be the original, we go with the general majority when we're trying to decide, does this is this phrase supposed to say Jesus Christ or is it supposed to say the Lord? Something like that. So you have 1,000 manuscripts that say Jesus Christ, and then you have two manuscripts that say the Lord, something similar like that. But again, another reason that I don't think the Bible was corrupted is because when you talk about corruption, you're talking about changing the whole of the meaning. Whereas with the Bible, the whole of the meaning is even in certain texts when we have a differentiation, something that's different, it doesn't even change the meaning. It just says something slightly different, like what I mentioned, Jesus Christ or the Lord, or uh, there's like a letter difference, or there's which can change the meaning of a word, but you can get easily get back to the original because of, like, say, there's one example that Bart Ehrman brings up that's he was angry or he was forgiving. And that does change the meaning within the sentence, but it's one letter difference. And I think that you would be able to see all of the other copies and say, well, 1,000 of these say he was forgiving, and in these two it says he was angry. And it's one letter difference, so the scribe easily made a mistake. So it wasn't trying to change it on purpose. So when we talk about corruption, you have to think, how could it be corrupted if thousands and thousands and thousands of people copied it and it's spread all throughout the world? How can one person collect all of those manuscripts and then change them all? So I don't think that the Bible was corrupted. And when we look back, we can easily figure out, maybe not easily, but you can figure out by compiling all of them together to see which ones might be the original sayings and which ones might not be. And even then, even if you have slight differences, it's not changing the whole of the meaning. We still have the meaning, the original meaning of what's being said. So, a little bit about uh, the corruption of the Bible. I think the Bible is completely dependable when the Bible spread throughout the world after Jesus Christ and after the apostles wrote the Gospels. It's very dependable.